Hey guys, it's John here from Sonic Drive Studio. Thanks for tuning into the channel and welcome to this quick and dirty rundown of my current 2020 recording setup. I've gotten a lot of questions about this over the years, so I thought it would be fun to finally do this for you guys as a sort of bonus video. Okay, so let's start with what I call my front end setup. So usually when I record my guitars, I go straight into this DIGITECH FREQOUT pedal. It's a really cool feedback emulator and it's so convenient for when I need that natural feedback sound, since I can't really do that in real life by cranking my monitors. From that pedal the signal goes into this VALETON pole position true bypass switcher. It's basically a pedal with 4 independent true bypass loops, and I have a bunch of pedals in those loops. I have that there because I like having everything hooked up always. Sometimes when inspiration strikes, it can be a bit annoying to have to hook everything up, so this helps with that, and it also helps to keep my signal clean when I don't want to use any of these effects at all. These pedals are basically here for having fun and experimenting with effects, but also for when I want to commit some of these effects onto my recordings and or DI tracks. And I always record my DI tracks along with the processed signals, so that's important for me. The first loop has one of my original DIGITECH WHAMMY pedals in it. It's the first generation WHAMMY pedal, the WH1. Quite collectible these days, and since I'm kind of a WHAMMY fanatic, which you probably already guessed, I had to have one. And in fact, I now own a bunch of them. There's something very magical about these pedals to me for some reason, so I've been hoarding them a little bit. So that one has its own loop, not that the bypass is bad though. In the second loop I have one of my WHAMMY 5 pedals. It's basically the newest and best WHAMMY pedal there is when it comes to sound and functionality. No other pitch shifting device has been able to replicate the tones of the DIGITECH WHAMMYs in my opinion. And they just look really cool too. From there on we're going into this Line 6 M5 STOMPBOX modeler, which I have set up on this table here so I can easily reach it for tweaking. This thing can do a lot, so it's very convenient for me to have this here in case I need an effect while I'm recording, as opposed to adding it after the fact, etc. From that pedal we're going back into the switcher, and in the third loop I have these two wah-wah pedals. I've loved wah-wah pedals since I was young, so I had to have a couple of them here. The first one is a Boss PW10 wah. I used to have one when I was younger, and what I like about it is the fact that you can create your own custom wah sounds on it, and it sounds really good too. So that's a digital wah-wah pedal. And then we have this analog DUNLOP 535Q wah, which I also really like because of its tweakability. And in the fourth loop I have this WHAMMY DT hooked up, which I also really love. It's unique because it also has this virtual capo and drop tune section on the right, and that momentary switch on the bottom is also a very cool feature for creative sounds. And this DIGITECH foot switch pedal here allows me to scroll through the presets of the WHAMMY DT without having to bend down, so that's also very neat. Alright, so from the output of that switcher, the signal goes into my audio interfaces or guitar modelers, so let's take a look at those. The first one that I have here is the newest addition to my studio, and it's my HELIX rack. I'm super excited about this thing and I'm looking forward to using that one a lot in the future. I'm just a huge fan of the Line 6 HELIX platform because I love the amp tones, the effects and the workflow. Can't say enough good things about it basically. So I have this hooked up via USB, and I also have the controller on the floor here on my right side. This is also a very cool piece of gear. I love what you can do with it. The colored rings are great and the naming on the scribble strips is very cool as well. Pretty essential for me to have here. Then I also have 2 expression pedals hooked up here to control effects like wah-wah and pitch shifting. And yesterday I hooked up this DIGITECH WHAMMY 5 to my HELIX. I have it in one of the effects loops, and I also have it hooked up via MIDI, so I can change the presets and control the sweep with my expression pedals on the floor, which is really handy and cool as well, for whenever it's convenient for me to use a WHAMMY pedal in the signal chain of the HELIX. This can be useful for stuff like reamping, etc. Under there lies my XFX3, although I don't really use that as often these days. The main reason for this is simply because I just prefer working with the HELIX. It's also hooked up via USB in case I need to record or reamp a track with that. Then over here on my desk I have a Line 6 HX STOMP, which I also got very recently. I also did a video on this pedal, and if you haven't seen that, go check it out now. But it's an amazing little pedal as it can do so much and it sounds really great. That is also hooked up to my PC via USB for recording direct. And then over here I have my old Line 6 UX2 interface. which I only use to record my voiceovers for certain types of videos. I can run that in conjunction with PodFarm, so that's really handy for adding effects and stuff. So all 4 interfaces are connected via USB, and all the outputs of these devices are being fed into this little Yamaha MG10 mixer over here. This is also new to my setup, but it has made my life a lot easier. The X-Effect and HELIX are connected via XLR, and the STOMP and UX2 via regular unbalanced cables. The XLR outputs are feeding all those signals into my studio monitors up here, which are my Atom A77Xs. I got these a few months ago when I decided it was time to upgrade from my old A7Xs. The A77Xs really sound amazing. They have a lot of detail across the entire frequency spectrum, and I love how the extended low end sounds. Very good for mixing in my opinion, quite a bit better than the A7Xs that I used to have. I also have this old and basic M-Audio MIDI keyboard on my desk for whenever I want to record some piano parts or synths, etc. Now, as you probably already know if you're familiar with this channel, is that I'm a huge tube amplifier fan. If you guys are interested, I might do a video where I show all my amps, so let me know in the comments whether you'd be interested in seeing that. This past week I've been working with this PV6505 for an in-depth demo, so stay tuned for that one as it will be out very soon. Now let's check out what I have on this table here. These pedals are here for the front end of my tube amps. So I like to have them here for whenever I want to run some effects directly into my tube amp. The DI signal for my interfaces, mostly from the FRACTAL and HELIX, are being fed into here and then into the tube amps. So I'm running a sort of 4-cable method here with my amps. And in the middle, in between the interface and the amp, I have another VALETON pole position true bypass switcher for the same reason as before, just to keep my signal clean when I don't want to use all of these effects. So the signal goes from the interfaces right into there. Let's check out what I have in the loops. In the first loop I have my Line 6 HX effects hooked up, which is also an amazing multi-effects pedal. Very convenient to have this here in this setup. Then in the second loop I have these 3 analog drive pedals for boosting the tube amps. The first one is an ELECTRO HARMONIX Soul Food, which is basically a clone as far as I know. It has a nice and transparent sound. And then we have the Maxon OD808 for those classic tube screamer tones. And finally we have a Boss SD1 Super Overdrive, which I also got recently. The third loop has this MXR 10-band EQ in it. This can be very useful for shaping the sound of the guitar going into the amp. And in the fourth loop here I have these 3 preamp pedals. People also often refer to these types of pedals as amp-in-a-box pedals. I like to use those on the clean channels of the amps or in the effects returns. The first one is a Diesel VH42, which sounds killer. It emulates the sound of the famous VH4 amp. Then we have the awesome FRIEDMAN BEOD Deluxe, which is also killer. This is a limited edition from Thomann. And finally we have the Bogner Ubershell pedal, which is also pretty cool. And then from the switcher the signal goes into the front of the tube amps, and from the speaker out the signal is being fed into this Fractal Audio LB2 X-Load reactive load. It does a good job at that. And from the output of the LB2 the signal goes back into the interfaces and back into my DAW. Overall this setup is very flexible. Everything is hooked up and in reach for whenever I need it, and I really love working at this sort of mad scientist station. It may not look super classy, but it does the job and it helps me to reach my creative goals. I guess that's all for this video, so thank you so much for watching. Please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe along with the notification bell to stay up to date on all of my activities. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next video.